and welcome to Apparitions and Alibis, Episode 7. I am your host, AJ Stallman. Y'all just got an update that we're in Germany now. So, hello, new listeners. I hope you're enjoying what I'm throwing at you, picking up what I'm putting down, and all that jazz. You know, my sophomore year of college, I thought it would be an amazing idea to learn German through the college completely online. Needless to say, I barely passed. Not an easy language, and even harder if you are basically teaching yourself. For today's true crime episode, we are talking about the Black Sisters. So, while the crime is actually committed in New Jersey, the family involvement is very rooted in Christiansburg, Virginia. There are so many names with this family. And there's like two Johns, and it took me a solid hour to try to figure out what was happening and which John did what and who died when, but I am 97% sure that I have it figured out. So, I have my dogs, I have my coffee, I'm ready to stuff my face. Let's do this. To begin the story, we have to meet the family. Oceana, nicknamed Osie, was born September 1885, most likely in New York, to Caroline Bell Wardlaw and Colonel Robert Maxwell Martin. Her father had fought in the Confederacy and the American Civil War, and her mother had a career in education. However, at one point, Caroline was removed from a position due to unstable behavior. Now, her mother, Caroline, had three sisters: Virginia Oceana Wardlaw, who was never married; Mary Elizabeth Wardlaw, who married Fletcher Tillman Sneed and had three sons, who were Fletcher Wardlaw Sneed, John Wardlaw Sneed, and Albert Charles Sneed. Both sisters were involved with education. The third sister was Bessie Gertrude Wardlaw. There were also two brothers: John Banks Wardlaw, a journalist who taught at Christiansburg School with Virginia and Mary, and Albert Goodall Wardlaw, a reverend who was not involved with the school. Caroline, Mary, and Virginia were known for dressing in black and behaving suspiciously. Several strange deaths followed the women in their lives. In 1853, the Montgomery College was established, and in 1876, it was within the family's hands. 4 years later, the census would show that the new owner, Mrs. Pollock, Virginia Wardlaw, John Banks, and his wife, Lizzie Wardlaw, as well as Albert Wardlaw, were all living at the school. Virginia was listed as being a teacher at the school. John Banks and Lizzie would both die within the first year of being at the school, but I could not find out any information on the causes of death. In 1900, Mrs. Pollock was too aged to keep up with running the school and deeded the school to Martha, Osie's grandma, and Virginia. They renamed it Montgomery Female College. Everything was going swimmingly for a while. The dorms were updated, the curriculum was reworked, and Virginia had returned to her love of teaching. Soon, her sister Mary and her sons Fletcher and John arrived. The trio's arrival caused no issues. It was the arrival of Caroline and Oshie that began to muck things up, and Caroline took control of the school. She made sudden changes to the curriculum, moved students from one classroom to another for no reason, and instilled suspicions and secrecy as she is installed up to 3 padlocks on some of the doors. All three sisters took to roaming the halls, surprising students with their out-of-nowhere appearances. I don't know how I feel about Caroline. Is she putting the locks on the door for actual reasons or just to creep out the students so they are more willing to listen to her? I don't know. Soon, John and Fletcher moved to Tennessee, and they opened up a sawmill together. While they were there, they fell in love with daughters of a top-notch lawyer. John married Anna, and Fletcher was wed to Vashti, which I love that name. It's beautiful. Around 1906, Caroline decided to visit John in Tennessee and asked him to accompany her back with him to Virginia to teach at the school. He declined and asked her to leave. I'm guessing she wouldn't because he had the police remove her from his house. It's said that he told neighbors that he wouldn't let his aunt wreck his home. However, in a couple of weeks, Caroline returned and again asked him to come back with her to Virginia, and he agreed and left his wife of only 3 years behind. Anna wrote letters to him constantly, but with John under his aunt's thumb, she had no chance. Poor Anna's health soon declined, and she was placed in a sanatorium. What Anna didn't know was that John's spirit was declining at the same time. It is suspected that he attempted to take his life on 2 separate occasions. One, when he fell off a train while on a trip with Caroline. They insisted it was an accident, but the brakeman truly believed he witnessed an attempted suicide. Only a few weeks later, John was pulled from an open cistern, which is a tank for storing water. And he was pulled just in time to save his life. Virginia raised the alarm on this incident, but it was explained as an accident while he was trying to take measurements for the school's water supply. But not even a week later, at 8 a.m., Virginia again raised the alarm. John was found thrashing about on the floor of his room at the college, swallowed in flames. It was later found that his nightclothes were covered in kerosene. 3 hours later, he died. John's life had been largely insured by his aunts, and he had recently changed the beneficiary from his wife to his Aunt Virginia. The settlement was a total of $12,000, which in 2019 was equal to $341,467. During this time, Caroline returned to Tennessee and insisted that Fletcher come to Louisville concerning some family property. Vashti later learned that Fletcher had fallen ill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and traveled to go see him. However, once she arrived, Caroline refused to allow her to see him. Caroline stated he was just far too ill. A week later, when Fletcher had not returned like Caroline promised, Vashti went back for a second time. Once getting there, she was informed that Fletcher had been moved from one boarding house to another by some woman named Mrs. Martin, aka Caroline. So Vashti returned home and after a period of time obtained a divorce. It was then that Fletcher came to the college, married O.C. So O.C. married her first cousin in 1906. The wedding took place in secret because the family wasn't too fond of the idea. January 13, 1908, however, the second ceremony was held in New Jersey once the sisters were won over, shortly before the birth of their first child. The 3 sisters entered several fake business deals, and Christiansburg and the surrounding areas, they really messed up any trust the community had in them since the people already believed that they killed John. Rumors spread around the town that the sisters engaged in secret rituals in the local cemetery and around the graves of their brother, John, and his wife, Lizzie. With this, attendance in the school dropped and chaos reigned in the classrooms. By 1904, the local all-male school had closed, so those students were in attendance to the Montgomery Female Academy, which was renamed Montgomery Hall. Vandals did extensive damage on the school, and by 1908, all three sisters, along with Fletcher and Oshie Sneed, left Virginia for New York City and New Jersey. Unfortunately, Oshie and Fletcher's first child only lived 2 days. For some unknown reason, while Oshie was pregnant with her second child, Fletcher moved to Canada under an assumed name and was never contacted again. Like, he just vanished. I worded that weird. He never reached out again. He did not contact Oshie ever again. And he just left her in the care of his mother and aunts. Oshie had always been the object of scorn for her mother as well as her aunts. Since she was born, they basically deliberately tried to starve her to death. After the departure of her husband, Oshie's health began to fail. A Dr. Pettit was called in to look at the sickly pregnant woman. He found her suffering from depression, general weakness, and malnutrition. He later told the police she seemed depressed and indeed afraid of those around her. Why don't you say something? If you go somewhere and they are scared of the people that they are living with, maybe you should say something. Maybe if he said something earlier, the rest of the story wouldn't have happened the way the rest of the story happens. I don't know. The doctor visited the home several times and repeatedly found that his care instructions were not being followed. Because the sisters were not cooperating, nor were they paying him, he just stopped visiting. The sisters called another doctor who would smuggle food into Oshie when he saw her condition. Not long after her second child was born, he sneaked in through the window to check on her, but Virginia caught him and threw him out. This doctor went to a lawyer who told him that nothing could be done. That makes me so mad. How could nothing be done? Several months later, Pettit was called again and found Oshie had been even weaker than before and was no longer pregnant. The baby, that was named David, had been taken to a hospital where he was in poor health. He was later placed in an orphanage by the sisters. Virginia told Pettit to inform Oshie that she was dying and to tell her to make a will. Instead, Pettit had a nurse brought in to care for Oshie. The nurse stayed just 1 day before being removed by the sisters. Rather than pay $100 for the medical bill, they offered to make him an $1,000 beneficiary for Oshie's will. He declined and decided to take steps against the sisters, believing that Oshie was under some hypnotic influence. What he didn't know was that she was being given regular but unnecessary doses of morphine for her postpartum pain by her mother and aunts. When the doctor returned to check on her before he reported the strange case to the police, he found that the home had been abandoned and the sisters were gone. The family resurfaced in another neighborhood in 1909 when Virginia visited Julius Caraba, a New York attorney, and asked him to help a dying woman prepare a will. Caraba came to Oshie's bedside while her mother and aunts prayed over her. Insert eye roll. After the prayers, Virginia asked Oshie if she wanted to make a new will, which Oshie agreed. Caraba told the woman that Oshie needed medical attention and food. The sisters say that they can afford neither. So he offered to write a check out to them. The sisters left to find a pen, and while they were gone, he was able to talk to Oshie. She told him that she was dying and reached under her pillow, pulling out her will, in which she left everything to her grandmother and asked him if he could be the executor. The sisters offered Caraba 7,000, or as of 2019, 199,189. Sorry, numbers. But they offered him that money to make them the beneficiaries. He refused, and they dropped him as their attorney. In 1909, Virginia was served as a defendant in a lawsuit for non-payment of the price of a piano. Her response to the plaintiff was, "Wait until we bury our dead." At this time, Oshie was near death from a lack of food and medical care and was moved into an apartment in New Jersey. There was no heat or gas for cooking, and the place was furnished with just 2 cots, a rug, a chair, and a barrel for a table. The police were called by the family on November 29th, 1909, stating there had been an accident. The police sent a physician to their home. Virginia led Dr. Simmons to an upstairs bathroom where Oshie's body lay naked in the tub of water with her head tilted under the faucet. There was a suicide note pinned to her clothes beside the tub that read, "Last year, my little daughter died. Other near and dear kindred too have gone to heaven. I long to go there too. I've been ill and weak a long time now. Death will be a blessed relief to me in my sufferings. When you read this, I will have committed suicide. My sorrow and pain in the world are greater than I can endure. Oshie W.M. Sneed." Oshie was buried December 7th, 1909, at Mount Hope Cemetery in New York, beside her father, 7-year-old brother Hugh, and 2-day-old infant, Marie Alberta. Her infant son, David Pollock Sneed, who had been taken by the sisters and put into an orphanage, died July 18th, 1910, at the age of 9 months, and is now buried with his family. Virginia's answers to Dr. Simmons were deemed suspicious, and the police were called to investigate. Oshie's death was identified as a drowning, with starvation as a contributing cause. Suspicion for the death quickly focused on her mother and 2 aunts. The investigator who originally arrived at the home notes that it was cold and appeared unoccupied, and that the victim had been dead at least 24 hours, prompting investigators to wonder about the delay in discovering the body. The evidence against the sisters consisted of several insurance policies taken out on the young woman, as well as several suicide notes found in the possession of Oshie's own mother with similar handwriting and similar styles, as well as the family's treatment of Oshie prior to her death. All 3 were arrested and charged with murder. Fletcher, Oshie's husband, was located under the name of John Lucas in Canada, and he was questioned. No evidence was found against him, and he was never charged. He died in California on January 12, 1955, under his own name. But why did no one ever ask why he bailed? I wonder if an aunt promised him money. Virginia Wardlaw starved herself to death in prison in 1910 while awaiting trial. Caroline Martin, late into her trial, finally pled guilty to manslaughter and was taken to jail. She was declared mentally unstable, and eventually she was transferred to an insane asylum on May 18th, 1912, where she ended up dying in 1903. 1913, I'm sorry. Time travelers. Years later, evidence emerged that suggested she poisoned her own husband to collect $10,000 or $307,320 as of 2019 with his life insurance policy. She's also suspected for pushing her 7-year-old son, Hugh, down a flight of stairs for which she collected $22,000. Mary Sneed was released on technicality since there's no charge for an accomplice to manslaughter and went to Colorado to live with her youngest son, Albert Charles Sneed. They later moved to California and she died in 1937. It's said that the school that is now Christiansburg Middle School may still be haunted by Virginia, Mary, and Caroline. Ghostly apparitions appear in the hallway dressed in black. The lights often flicker on and off, and it is said at times a baby can be heard crying. Perhaps little Mary Alberta. And that is the story of the Black Sisters. What a family, am I right? I mean, winner, winner, chicken dinner right here. The whole time researching, I was hoping that I am not related to them. Is that weird? I reminded myself, however, that my family isn't from the same areas as them, so that helped. But honestly, I hate them. Like deep in my core, if I could spit in their general direction, I would. Especially Caroline. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe and leave a review on your podcast listening station. You can follow us at Apparitions and Alibis on Instagram. Thank you all for your support. It means so much to me. I've never imagined that I would be having listeners in Australia and France and Germany, and it's so cool. I hope you have a great day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will talk at you later. Toodles.